It's time for the Basic Gray collaboration, so let's have some fun today with our old Basic Gray papers making a scrapbook page. Hey, it's Beth. Welcome. Today is the Bringing Back Basic Gray collaboration, which is just a small collab with my friend Sarah, who's crafting and relaxing here on YouTube, and Kathy, who's Stampin' Cat over on Instagram. Since we all found that we were hoarders of the old Basic Gray paper, we decided to pull them out every month and play with them. Not necessarily trying to use everything up, just trying to enjoy the hoard instead of letting it sit in a drawer somewhere. So this month I've pulled out some papers, and they're a mix from the fact and fiction collections. It's two different collections. One's fact, one's fiction. They're all double-sided. I kind of started with this one because I figured it already has kind of a layered scrapbook page look, and so I wanted to go ahead and use that. And so then I pulled out some of these others. Thought this would be a good mat for the photos, and then like some accent. And then I loved the journaling possibilities with this. I also pulled out some heart and flower embellishments that I've made in the past with scraps. And then, because it's also this month in my Facebook group, the tool challenge is forgotten stamps. So every month we have a challenge that kind of encourages us to use some of those tools that we thought would be really cool to have that maybe we just don't really use. Or a lot of times it's because we forget to use them. So this month is forgotten stamps, and so I always seem to forget about stamping on scrapbook pages. So I pulled out some stamp sets that I'm sure I haven't used in a while, and going to see if I can incorporate any of them into my pages. So just a variety of sets. I thought maybe I could try for a title. So we'll see how that all plays out, but I know for sure that these are the papers that I'm going to be using, and these are the photos that I'm going to be using. So now I need to figure out a layout and my embellishments. So let's figure that all out together.
I decided to start off with a sketch, and I like this sketch not necessarily because it matched the photos, but because it was more of like vertical placement with all of the different pieces, and I could preserve the torn detail of the page on the left and then the little banner on the right. The sketch is by Brenda Ragsdale at Grand Diva's Scrappy Place, and I will link that down in the description box below for you. But I wanted to use that tan kind of as my base and just to kind of help the photo stand out a little bit, and then I'm going to use this orange as the smaller piece that's going to go horizontal. And again, I'm just wanting to keep that detail on the left-hand side of the page and then that little banner detail at the bottom right. I am going to go through this page and cut out a bunch of the little tickets, tags, pieces, whatever, that are either brown or pinkish, and see if I can't use those somewhere in my layout. And I know I mentioned that Sarah and Kathy are part of this collaboration, and they will be linked in the description box below as well for you, so you can go down and check out their projects for this month. If you have Basic Gray in your stash, you are welcome to pull it out and play along with us each month. It's nice to be able to use it. I didn't really get to enjoy it sitting in my drawer, so it's nice to be able to pull it out and put it to good use. So I decided this last one I'm going to do is this big piece. I think it will go well in the upper right hand corner. The sketch had another piece of, I think, patterned paper, so I'm going to use this kind of as that piece, but then layer in some of the other little ephemera pieces that I cut out just because the white is so stark. And there's not a whole lot of other white in the page other than on the torn edges. So I like the pop of the natural white, but I don't want a ton of it showing. So I like to put my layout, kind of figure out placement of everything before I start gluing anything down. So you'll kind of see me go through this process a couple of times, and it's just helps me to figure out where things are going and how everything might be laid out. I am going to tear edges on this brown one and on the orange one to mimic the detail on the left-hand side of my base page, and I'm also kind of trying to ruffle the edges up a little bit just so that they're not flat. I'm going to do the edges of the orange as well and kind of push those up too. And I'm just trying to figure out where I want that brown, like if I wanted it to overlap one of the other torn edge detail on the base paper or be to the right. So again, now that I have my edges torn, I'm going to kind of put things back together, figure out placement. And this isn't how it turns out in the end anyway, which is kind of funny. But I decided that I wanted something else up there with my, like in that top right corner, and so I found that to-do piece, which is kind of brown, and it is white, so I am going to have some white showing, but I figured that would be a better place to do journaling. Like the other pieces weren't going to allow me to say much for my journaling. So now I'm going to pull in my stamps. I'm looking for one that might act as a title, and I find the one that says make every moment special with the people you love most. And it is a Kaiser craft stamp. All That Glitters, I think is what it's called. And then I'm also going to be pulling the Love This arrow from the Odd or So Grateful stamp set from Close to My Heart. These are all old, so if they're, I can list them down below, but I don't know that I'll be able to link any down below. And then I also pull in a stamp set. It's a planner stamp set, and I decide I want to use that tab on a scrap piece of the kind of craft colored paper, and so I'm going to stamp it out. Since I haven't used the stamp in a while, I'm going to stamp it first on some scrap white cardstock and realize that piece isn't big enough, so we'll switch that out. But since these stamps are either brand new and never been used or haven't been used in a long time, I want to make sure I test them out. So that's good, and I'm going to fussy cut that out, and then I will tuck that up at the top. And this planner set, I don't even know who it's by. I've lost the original packaging. I think it got torn up, so it's just in a random bag. But again, I've had this for a while, and I'm pretty sure it came from Michael's a long time ago. So figure out my placement for that at the top. And one of the reasons I decided to incorporate that was because on the sketch there were tabs at the top of both photos, and it wasn't going to work for my bottom photo, but it would work for the top one. So I'm going to stamp again my title stamp. I stamped it on white cardstock just to kind of break it in, make sure it was going to work, and then I put it on the tan or the craft, and I'm going to trim it down, and then I want to distress the edges a little bit just to help it stand out. So I don't have one of those little distresser tools. I just use my scissors. They work perfectly fine. So I'm going to work my way around to distress those edges, and then again trying to figure out what else I want to incorporate. I feel like I need something else with that piece, and there was a pink ticket piece somewhere that I had already cut out, and I have temporarily lost it. I'm pulling out the baggie of some flowers that I had punched a long time ago from scraps, trying to find ones that had orange, and I couldn't find any that worked really well, so I found some that worked okay. And I'm going to do the same thing with some hearts here. Like the orange there's two orange there on top that were too orange, so I go with one. I was looking for a kind of a reddish orange, but could only find red. So I pulled some things out, and I don't end up using them. You'll see what I do end up doing here in a bit, but I decided that I'm going to go ahead and get my main pieces laid down. I wanted to stress those edges a little bit. I'm going to tear the other side just because that right side felt just kind of off. It needed some tearing too. It needed some love over there. So the things that I know where they're going to go, I'm going to go ahead and put them down, and then I can kind of finish up the embellishments here in a bit. So I've had some comments before that my layouts tend to be basic, and they are, and that is because I am 7 years behind. I've tended to run about 6-7 years behind on my scrapbooking, and I tend to make things in duplicate or triplicate for mine and both of my daughter's albums. And so right now, like this is a pretty fussy layout for me. This is unusual for me just because of the amount of time it took, and I tend to go basic just because it's what I have time for, and right now I just want to get the pages in the album so that the photos can be preserved and enjoyed at some point, whereas right now they're sitting in a box and it's not doing anybody any good. So yes, my layouts do tend to be basic, but that is why, and someday I'm going to get back to that point where I can afford to do more elaborate and involved layouts. I mean, kind of like this. Like this was kind of out of my norm, and it's kind of nice to change things up every once in a while. But again, I don't know that I can afford this amount of time on, every layout times 3. So again, now that I have all of my pieces down that I know where they're gonna go, I'm gonna play with the kind of embellishment pieces, laying things out. The title needs something behind it, and nothing that's on my table right now is working. So I'm gonna get all what I have laid out, and then I finally just realized I need to step away. I need to take a little break and kind of let it sit, let it kind of sit on my mind for a while and see how I feel, or let me step away and see what it looks like when I come back. So at this point, I step away and come back, and I'm like, all right, it's the flowers have to go. I did take some time to find that pink ticket piece that I had been looking for. It was attached to the back of one of the stamp sets. I'm going to stamp out the arrow that says "Love This" on some scrap paper that I found in my basic gray stash. And I stamped it twice because the first time didn't stamp very clear, which would have worked since basic gray is kind of that grungy look anyway. And then I do stamp that little friend stamp below the photo. And this layout is just celebrating my husband's aunt had a daycare, and that's where both of our kids went when I worked. And then even when I, quit working full time and stayed home, they did go part time just to have, some socialization, and it gave me time to focus on our craft business without their distraction. So his aunt was retiring, and this group of kids got to be really good friends throughout the course of their time at her daycare. And so we wanted to do something special for her to commemorate her retirement and be something from us. So we all went somewhere together with her, and then we made her a little frame with their thumbprints turned into owls because she loves owls. So it's kind of what this layout is about. So I end up making all new flowers. I wanted colors that coordinated a little bit better, so I used that same scrap that I stamped and cut my arrow on. and just brought out 3 layers or 3 sizes of flower punches that I have to create some layered flowers. And then I'm bringing in like a little 1/4-inch circle punch to make some centers of the flowers, and I feel really better. I feel better about how these look than the embellishments I had pulled out earlier. And then I decided to bring in a couple of small flowers, and I'm trying to figure out the placement because, trying to keep the rule of like odd number of embellishments or odd number of items, but there's not really a visual, it's not an actual triangle. A lot of times they say on a layout you should have a visual triangle to kind of lead the eye. Just because of what the base paper already had on it, there's kind of more than a triangle. It's a polygon, quadrilateral, I don't know. You can figure out which geometry term might describe this a little bit better. But so now I'm going to put these pieces down, and I do like that title stamped piece on with that pink ticket much better. But I decided I want to pop up my arrow, so I pulled out some really old foam squares that for some reason I'm trying to use up, and I looked at the date. They're actually from 2004. So I was like, maybe I should have had some adhesive to these. But I think they got buried in my stash for a really long time, and then I decided I wanted to use them up. And at this point, I'm just trying to figure out the placement of my flowers, and then we can be almost done. I did stamp in the bottom right corner on that little banner detail of the page the word today, and then I just put the date of the event. And then here's a final look at my layout with the journaling done. And this layout was fun. I hope you enjoyed the process, and it gives you some motivation to use your basic gray if you have it. Again, please be sure to check out the links for Sarah and Kathy below. As always, thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you all have a very crafty day.